Hi, everyone. Today on the Writing Gym podcast, we're talking about self-publishing with a group of experts. It's a double episode this week, beginning with an expert panel and then a feature on one of our self-publishing experts. You're going to walk away with specific tips on the do's and don'ts of self-publishing, as well as an inside look at all the pros and the cons of publishing your own book. Make sure and download your self-publishing cheat sheet at www.writing-gym.com/self-publish.
Welcome to the Writing Gym podcast. We're here to pump up your writing. And now your host, Andy Brixey, personal trainer at the Writing Gym.
Hi, I'm Andy, personal trainer at the Writing Gym. Welcome to Chin Ups with the Self-Publishing Expert Panel. I'm excited to introduce you to this week's amazing guests. But first, a word from our sponsor, the Writing Gym. You know, you could break free from feeling like your writing is never good enough. You know you could write freely and achieve your publishing dreams. You're tired of rejection and lying awake till 2 a.m. wondering how you could have fixed your manuscript. Wallowing in self-doubt is not getting you closer to your writing goals. You need real standards, real support, and a real change. Are you ready to transform your writing and take it from the slush pile to publishable? We are currently accepting select writers in the Writing Gym. Visit www.writing-gym.com to apply. And now I'd like to introduce our resident writing coach, the gal who helps you pump your writing into shape in the Writing Gym. Welcome back to the Writing Gym podcast, Annalisa Parent.
I am so happy to be here with you again, Andy.
And everyone, I have a very interesting story, sort of straight from school, about Annalisa this week. Even if she is a fantastic writing coach, she has some very strange collections. For example, when Annalisa was young, she had an extensive pencil collection. That pencil collection was actually on display in the town library too. How did that even happen?
I always loved writing, and so from an early age, I started collecting really cool, quirky writing implements, and it grew to a large enough collection by the time I was 8 years old to fit in the display case in the town library.
Oh my goodness. All right, everyone. So your homework is to share your quirky collections with us at www.writing-gym.com/self-publish. And now let me introduce you to our fabulous guests. We have a very special episode today with 3 brand new guests. We wanted to showcase some different journeys in self-publishing, so we brought the wonderful Petros, the magnificent Barb Klein, and the fabulous Kim Tavendale together to discuss their self-publishing journey. Petros is an intuitive personal crisis coach / counselor who is currently completing his psychology degree. He does public speaking and works with individuals as well as businesses to better the mental health of Australian staff. He is the author of You Got This, 7 Steps to Effectively Solving Any Crisis Faster, Better. And then we have the lovely Barb, founder of Inspired Possibility, who's a certified life coach, writer, teacher, and retreat leader from Rochester, New York. Barb is committed to supporting others in living authentically and fully and honoring and caring for themselves, even in times of turmoil and challenge. Barb's first book, congratulations, is 111 Invitations, Step into the Full Richness of Life. And it offers a pathway of possibility and understanding, exploring the full range of human experience and emotion. And lastly, we have the lovely Kim Tavendale, who is a best-selling author with her latest book, The Art of Positivity, a life coach and a leading wedding officiant and life celebrant in the Denver area. She has a passion for helping people, especially women, grow into the best version of themselves. Along with Rose Chamberlain and Carol Marquise, Kim is the founder of The Inner B Word, a movement designed to empower women to reclaim the word and take it as a compliment. It is now an acronym that stands for beauty, intelligence, tenacity, confidence, and humor. Thank you all so much for joining us today. There's so many exciting things to share.
Thank you and welcome. G'day from Australia.
So here's the big first question, and I think maybe if you all just kind of took turns answering it, why self-publishing? You know, so many other authors take the traditional publishing route, and that's what's seen as, I don't want to say better, but sort of better. But tell me why self-publishing? Why did you choose that? Why don't you start, Barb?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I chose self-publishing because I could get a book out more quickly. And I think that self-publishing has come a long way to the point where they now produce really professional-looking books. So it seemed like a very natural route to take. Fewer bells and whistles and hoops to jump through. And I wanted to get my book out more quickly in a way that looked beautiful.
How about you, Kim?
Well, for us, it was very much a case of bringing a book to market very quickly, and also about not having somebody in between our message and our intended recipients. I think more editors that get involved and want to change this and change that, you start to dilute your message a wee bit. So we really wanted to have control over what we were doing. Plus, I think, as Barb said, it's come a long way, and the books really do look like professional books. We have ISBN numbers and all that good stuff. So why not cut out the middleman and go straight to the reader?
And how about you, Petros?
For myself, I hadn't made a firm decision which way I was going to go, but the editor, the freelance editor that I'd hired to edit my book and format it, sort of swayed me in that she pointed out it's a lot cheaper, but you could print on demand however many copies you needed at the time, whereas a lot of publishers here committed you to whatever it was, 1,000 copies, which was going to prove to be quite an expensive task. And similar to the other ladies, I just wanted to get this book out. So it was sort of off the back of a bit of coaching and advice of my editor that I went that way.
That's wonderful. And, we've had other self-published guests on the podcast. We recently spoke with Jim Filippi. And one of the things that we talked about during that time was balancing out the quality of your product so that people will read it and buy it and enjoy it, and you're happy to have your name on it, with the democratization that self-publishing gives to people. So can you talk to us a little bit about what that editing and coaching process was like for you around having a top quality product that you felt really proud of? Let's go in the same order. It's just easier.
Okay. Well, I didn't actually work one-on-one with a writing coach, but I did. My book began at a Julia Cameron workshop, and I did do a couple of writers' retreats with Jennifer Loudon. So I had that support around putting together a book that flowed nicely. And then I did hire Annalisa as my editor, and that was great, as a way to really find my voice and make sure that came through. That was really important. In terms of me picking my self-publisher, I went with Balboa Press, which is a division of Hay House, and I knew that company and I felt comfortable with their products. I also like the fact that it is tied to a regular publisher, for lack of a better term, and I know that they pay attention to their authors, and that if it were to go, big enough and sell enough copies, that they often pick up their authors. So that was part of my decision making.
Well, for me, working with two other wonderful ladies, we kind of coach each other a lot. I have some experience as an editor for another publisher here in the Denver area, so I brought that to bear. And working with a coach is always a great idea, no matter what kind of goal you're trying to accomplish. But a lot of people want to write and can't write, or not that they can't write, but that they can't write it down, that they can't get it out. And so a coach is a great avenue to go to really find your voice and help you refine that and make sure it happens, that you have someone that you're accountable to, because quite often writing is a very lonely business. And in that aspect, I was really lucky that I had two very motivated and collaborative partners who were able to work on it and like hold my feet to the fire on getting certain things done.
With myself, I haven't had a lot of coaching done. I've sort of stumbled my way through writing this book, or producing this book, somewhat intuitively. But the coaching I did get, and a lot of it came from the editor that I mentioned before, opened me up to avoiding a lot of big mistakes. So it wasn't just about how does the book look, but is it conveying the right message, or the message in the right way? And valuable advice like get a review group together to read the book and give feedback. Even questions like, would you buy the book? Did this book interest you at all when you read it? And I think the right people have come along the journey at the right time, just to give that little bit of golden nugget of information. And I think it's important, apart from doing your own research, that you do approach people, either be it a coach or someone who's been there, done it ahead of you. It's very important, because especially if you're going to put your book out there, it's a representation of you. You want it to be the right representation. So
my next question has to do with selling. How did each of you go about selling? I know that you each have your own websites, which we'll include in our show notes, so everyone who listens can go and purchase all the books. But how do you go about selling those copies? How do you go about marketing yourself and building your platform?
Same order again?
Sure. Okay. Or just all at once, whatever makes you happy.
Okay. Well, that's a great question. And I think that's another reason I like the publishing company that I went with, because they took care of getting it out to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and in hardcover, paperback, and ebook. So I didn't have to do any of that myself, which certainly helped a lot. Then it was a matter of making people aware of the fact that it was out there. And quite honestly, my book launched before I was even ready for it to. I actually had to search myself on Amazon, and it was already there, which was really cool. I hadn't held it in my hands yet, but once I did, I guess my plan has always been to launch organically. And I have found people that I know who are in areas that are interested in the book. So yoga studios have been interested, wellness centers, just went down to Texas with a massage therapist who has a bed and breakfast. So people that can host me and are interested in this kind of work have put together little book launch parties. So I have been traveling around. I called my Texas trip the start of my world tour, because I don't know where I'm going next. But just really organically like that. And then through Facebook, through my website, letting people know about it. And I've started doing some Facebook Lives with it. And reading some of the pieces as I talk, just as a way for people to hear it and get to experience it.
Great. How about you, Kim?
Well, we have been pre-marketing our book. Our book is actually in the review process at the moment for formatting and everything, so that's very exciting. But we've been actually laying some groundwork for the past couple of months, alluding to it coming out, doing little teasers. We were a sponsor of a beauty pageant, and so we've been doing a little bit of groundwork. So our book is not quite ready to come just yet. In the next couple of weeks, it's going to be all finished and ready to go. So we're doing a lot of that. We have several launch parties lined up, as Barb was saying, people who have thought our idea of book was really lots of fun. So we've leaned pretty heavily on some good contacts that we have professionally and personally between the three of us. And that's really helping a lot. We'll have it available for sale on our website. It'll also be available through Amazon. Not too sure if we're going to do a Kindle download or not yet, but we'll see how that goes. And as far as the rest of the marketing goes, so when it happens, I'll learn about it, because that's more Rosa's bailiwick than mine.
For myself, when I first got that copy, the first copy of that book, I was driving on away to an appointment and trying to drive and take selfies of me with my book because I couldn't believe I was holding it. I don't advise that to anyone. It's not the smart thing to do. But initially, I just started just offering it to friends, my network, anyone that would stop and listen. Even if they didn't listen, they would have to. And then I progressed to just local bookstores and crystal stores and what have you. Obviously, my website as well, and I'll give you that link, Andy, through the chat thing here. But then I was fortunate to get a major distributor here in Australia pick my book up, and it goes national to most of the major bookstores in May. First across the first or second week of May. So that, and plus it's on Amazon, who I'm publishing through. So it's just mostly starting small and local, and then just pushing it till it gets to a more larger scale.
That makes a lot of sense. So, writers come to me frequently with the question, I've got a book, I've got an idea, and I'm not sure if I want to self-publish or if I want to traditionally publish. And we walk through what the factors are for each of those. If you traditionally publish, one, it's harder. It's going to be a long haul, especially if you're publishing nonfiction. But once you are published, you do get some support from the publishing house around your marketing. Self-publishing is a lot easier to get into, but then you're really, for the most part, solely responsible for marketing that book. It sounds like Barb found a really good hybrid of that, but what kinds of things have you done to really get your name out there, to let people know that you had the book? What were your strategies on that uphill battle of, oh goodness, I've got to do this all by myself, because you're all in a really successful place right now. So how did you do that? What's your magic? We'll go in the same order.
Okay. I don't know that I have any magic. I really think, other than trusting, like I say, trusting the process and trusting that I know people all over the world and connecting with them and kind of saying, hey, you want to have a book event there? Let's do it. And planting seeds. I mean, I planted seeds back in Texas in the fall when I was there and said, I want to come on tour here. And one of the women said, I'll host you. And I said, great, let's do it. And it's a matter of just following through. And like Petra said, talking to the people that I've been fortunate that like some of the yoga teachers who have read my book have started sharing it in their classes. And so that raises interest. So I think it's finding those natural people who love your work and are willing to get out there and promote you as well. That helps a lot. And then asking for reviews on Amazon helps. So that's the magic I can share.
Great.
Yeah, I really agree with Barb there. You've got to find your tribe. You've got to find the people who are as excited about the book as you are, friends, family, colleagues, neighbors, and social media has been a huge one for us as well. We've really utilized social media in a big way. We're in a number of different groups and we attend a number of different networking meetings. So we're really about pushing those connections with people that are of a similar mind, or who happen to be a real B word themselves. So we go out there and we find those ladies who are beautiful and intelligent, tenacious, confident and humorous, and we introduce them and try and get them on board. As I said, we've been doing a lot of this groundwork for the past couple of months, so we expect to have that pay off some dividends hopefully in the next few months.
Very much like what I was saying before, start off small, find your footing, and plant those seeds, all of those things. A lot of people, and I've fallen into the trap, try to go really big straight off. It's not impossible, but it's a very hard slog, as they say here in Australia. You're making a tough job, tougher. The good thing about starting off small and going to your friends, going to your more sort of local type bookstores rather than your big chains is you have a chance to see, what the reactions are. You get to have a bit of a practice run, if you will. Instagram was another good one for myself. That worked really well. And really, it's just getting out there and finding unique ways to package your book. I give it away sometimes with my counselling. Sometimes I'll run a competition just to get people to go out and promote it for me. When I go to speak or run workshops, I've got it there front and centre on the table. So there's a lot of things you can do that also may not cost you anything to do. And I think as long as what you've written is of some help and interest to the person reading it, that person will pass that book on or will talk about it to someone as well. That all gives you great ammunition to then go to that big step and knock on the doors of a distributor or, whatever the case may be for you. So, that's what I did and what I would advise budding authors to do as well.
Thank you so much for listening to the amazing advice of our self-publishing panel. Now we're going to feature a very special self-publisher, author Jim DeFilippi. Jim is the owner of Brown Fedora Books, the author of 26 books varying in genre from mystery to military history. He grew up in a blue-collar neighborhood called Duck Alley on Long Island, wrote and taught school in northern Vermont for 30 years, is a Vietnam-era war veteran, father of two, grandfather of two, husband of 49 years. Jim has such a deep and varied history, and he's here to share with us how his life's journey has led him to be such an experienced and well-rounded author. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jim.
Oh, thank you, Andy. It's nice to be here.
Jim, I'm going to jump right in here. I am so curious. 26 books. Tell us about that.
No, it's actually, I think, 22 or 23.
Oh, just 22 or 20.
And basically, it's a byproduct of being really old. I mean, I started writing at 21, and that was a lot of years ago. So it just kind of happens.
Wow, I'm fascinated by this. Are they all in the same genre? Do you jump around?
No, I jump around an awful lot. In a sense, I started at the top and have been working my way down ever since. Back in the 90s, I had a really nice contract with HarperCollins, and I put out a crime novel called Blood Sugar. Got really good reviews, but didn't sell all that much. But basically then I thought I was just going to be a crime novelist, but I got a little tired of that. Do you want to hear the whole story? I don't know if you...
The whole story.
Okay. And so let me think. I did another book called Duck Alley based on the neighborhood I grew up in, but fictionalized. And then I had done it. Annalisa, you'd remember the Burlington Free Press. I was doing a humor column for that time. I've just always naturally kind of swerved towards humor. Even when I'm writing the grisliest crime novel, I'll always kind of tell some jokes. I used to describe it as driving on an old Vermont road where, you remember, they were humped and high in the middle and you had to keep fighting to stay on the center line. Well, I'm always fighting to stay serious, and my text is always going towards the humorous. So I just kind of let it go, and I just started doing humor books, which was fun. Then I started Brown Fedora, which again is a writers' consortium. It's a group of us writers, really each working on our own, but working together. And I realized that we had a lot of poetry, and we had a lot of fiction. And the reason for that, you ladies both know as writers, is everybody has poems and novels and short stories in their desk, but there's very few nonfiction. And the reason is most nonfiction is not written on spec. It's written after you have the contract because you have to do a lot of research, etc. So I'm thinking we need some nonfiction for Brown Fedora Books. I don't want people looking at the group and not seeing anything. I had just been to Italy. I had visited Monte Cassino, which was the scene of a horrible, horrible battle in World War II. I was just fascinated by it. So I said, I could do a history book on that. And I did, more or less as an offshoot to what I usually done. But it really became my bestseller. A lot of people, it's still selling today. I'm just really pleased. I could never quite understand why. So I did that. So I had that. I had the humor and the crime and the novel and the history. And then a few years ago, I moved down here to Salem, Massachusetts, which is a beautiful literary town. Everybody thinks about the witches, but to tell the truth, the literary history with Hawthorne, etc., is just phenomenal. And I fell in with a group of poets, and we meet every 2 weeks or so and just compare notes. And I was just blown away by the poetry, and I just kind of had to give it a try. It came out to be humorous poetry. It was a book called Pulp Poetry, and it combines crime novels with funny poems. And so I got into that. And finally, what I'm working on now is drama. I was reading a autobiography of Zelda Fitzgerald, and a few of the scenes would just make great stage scenes. I just said, this isn't a movie, this isn't a novel, this is a theater play. And so I've been working on that now. I bet when you asked me this question, you didn't know I'd go on for this long, but that's basically the answer. That's how I meandered into all these different type writings, all these different genres.
Wow, I love that. And kudos to you on having the courage to do that, because sometimes people will allow themselves to fall into one genre and stay there, which is great if you find one you really love, but
yes,
you shouldn't let yourself be restricted as a writer to one genre just because somebody else tells you to do that, or because you think that that's what you're supposed to do.
Exactly. And often it's a financial thing. I've never been in the position of having to pay the rent with my writing, but you think of great writers like Elmore Leonard and George V. Higgins. I don't know if you can see behind me, but I've got their letters on the wall there. I idolize them so much. And these were guys who would write a novel and would get a lot of commercial success, especially George V. Higgins. He wrote a wonderful novel called The Friends of Eddie Coyle. And there's nothing wrong with this, but in both their cases, their next 20 or 30 books and 20 or 30 years were in that genre and were kind of variants of that same idea. If Blood Sugar had become a bestseller, I almost know for sure that I'd be on my, 25th crime novel by now. And I really rather be doing what I'm doing. Again, I'm not getting rich and I'm not making the New York Times bestseller list, but I'm trying a lot of different genre and enjoying every one. It's just been great.
I love that perspective. And I also love the implication of being grateful for perceived failure, right? So some people might say, oh goodness, you published a book and it didn't make the bestseller list. And, there's always a lesson, even in the things that aren't successful in our lives. And I guess perspective gives us that. But, even for all the people who are listening, we all get rejection letters. We talked with John David Mann a couple of weeks ago, and he's a multiple times New York Times bestseller. He told this great story of getting a rejection letter after being a multiple times New York Times bestselling author. I mean, it happens to everyone. It's just part of the process, and the skill that we all need, Jim, you and me and Andy and everyone listening, is the ability to kind of turn that around and say, what can I learn from this? What's the take?
Absolutely. I remember reading somewhere that John Updike, towards the end of his life, was still in fear of having stories rejected by the New Yorker. Can you imagine that? But, it happens, and that's right. If you use it to go to something else, on my website at Amazon, or my authors page, I'll put in a quick plug, Amazon.com/author/Jim DeFilippi. I have a little humorous video where I kind of look at the camera and say, people ask me why I write in so many different genres. Well, I tell them this: when somebody tells me I can't do something, I tell them, oh, okay, I'll try something else then. And that's what I've been doing, instead of just plugging away at the same thing. And I've been enjoying myself. That's what it all comes down to.
Great. So tell us about, why do you write?
I just love it. I always knew I was going to be creative at something, whether it was telling a joke or performing or teaching or writing or whatever. And I got a teaching job in Vermont, and as you've already mentioned, was up there close to 40 years, taught about 30 of them. And I was thinking at that time I wanted a commercial way of doing things or being creative. And it's really hard anywhere being a filmmaker, but certainly almost impossible in Vermont. One or two might be doing it. Same with a songwriter. The songwriters are in Memphis and LA, and the filmmakers are in Hollywood. And the wonderful thing about writing is I just come downstairs every morning and sit at my keyboard, and I can be as creative as Hemingway and creative as Shakespeare. It's just a perfect outlet. And you don't age. I mean, I'm aging chronologically, but I'm having more fun, and I think doing better stuff now as a writer than I ever have. I just, I don't want to say I live for writing, because that sounds kind of hokey. But my wife would tell you I'm always kind of going around with a dreamy look on my face, thinking of my next line or my next sentence. And then I run down here and punch it out on the computer, and I'm a happy man for the rest of the day. Couldn't be better.
That's great. Tell us a little bit about that growth. You said that you're a better writer now than you were earlier in your career. How did you make that transformation?
Just, I guess, by reading different things and just picking up different thoughts and ideas from people, the poets I know down here in Salem, the writers I've admired. There's a thing called reverse engineering. And some people say when you go see a movie or you read a book, you shouldn't be doing this. You should just be engulfed by the world of that novel or that movie. And I just don't do that. I'm constantly reverse engineering and picking up things, just always asking myself, how did they do that? I still remember to this day, back in the 90s, it must have been, or even the 80s, reading an Elmore Leonard novel. And I always knew I liked him, and I wasn't quite sure what he was doing. And then I realized one of his tricks was, I don't know if I can explain this well enough, but he'll write in the third person. He walked into the room, John did this, John did that. But for each individual character, he takes on the syntax and the vocabulary of that character, as if that character was talking, even though he's not saying I did it. And it's just beautiful. I don't think Leonard made it up. I don't think he was the first to do it, but I almost fell out of my chair. I said, what a wonderful way to write. That's just one example. I'll go and say, into poetry, and I'll say, oh, I see what they're doing now. Or I'll read, as I say, I'm working on this Fitzgerald play now, and I've read Zelda's novels and F. Scott's novels, obviously, and I see the little tricks they do, like put in two common phrases, and then at the end of the sentence, punch in something else, and it just wakes people up. Another man I admire, and I won't show you the wall again, but I have a correspondence from him, is John Le Carré. Most people would call him a great spy novelist, but he's more than that. He's simply a great novelist, maybe the greatest. And his sentences, they'll be maybe 3 lines long. They'll start out, they'll take a turn to the left, they'll take a turn to the right, they'll end up somewhere completely different, and I'm just blown away by it. It's just great. So you pick up things by reading and by trying and by substituting and by, doing experiments, I guess. It's just great.
That's great. Now, you mentioned this Brown Fedora Consortium. Tell us about how you started that and how that's going for you. What do you guys do together? You might not want to hear this, but I think the whole idea of publishing houses and even agents, there's a lot of great people and talented literary agents and publishers, obviously, but I hate to say it, I'm going to step on some toes. I think they're dinosaurs. I think they're breathing in that volcanic ash. It's so easy now to just be your own publisher and be your own agent and editor. And so when I started doing that, I realized that it's so easy that there's 100,000 other people doing that now. And so I came up with a way to kind of help ourselves and help others. So I just reached out to a bunch of very talented people I know. I've been hanging around with writers my whole life, so I've been lucky enough to just meet some wonderful ones. And they agreed. They agreed to come on and start doing through Brown Fedora. Works out great. The royalties are better. I can finish a book on a Tuesday, and it's got worldwide distribution on Wednesday. You can't, HarperCollins isn't going to do that for you. Everything's great except the competition is brutal. I mean, there's so many other people who have figured this out that it's really hard to get your head and shoulders above water. Some people do it.
I have a friend named Dick Scott who lives just down the road from me here, 5 minutes, and he's sold about 30,000 books in the last couple of years, which is New York Times stuff. And I say, Dick, and it's all self-published stuff. He just goes to Amazon and puts it up. I say, Dick, what publicity do you do? None. Dick, how do you design the covers and stuff like that? Oh, whatever comes. But somehow that son of a gun is broken out and I don't know if anybody recognizes him as a Brown Fedora, as a best-selling novelist, but I'd like to sell 30,000 books. That's a good number, no matter who you're running with, you know? So the whole thing is changing, ladies. I think you know that too. The technology we're using now and the technology of on-demand printing and ebooks, it's wow. It's really is the 21st century.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm interested to hear more about how you think, because you, for our listeners, Jim teased me a little bit for still using a pen and paper to take notes during the podcast, which I do every time.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who's been in this world, writing and growing as an artist for so long, what has it been like? How has the change and invention of all this new technology changed the way you write or the way you work?
I think, quite frankly, it saved me as a writer. I was not doing well commercially. As I say, both my books were really well critically received. I'm talking about both my published by major publishers. And I'm sure we've all been through this. I went years of this, sending out the manuscript and just waiting for the rejection, and the manuscript came back. When my children were small, they used to hate see me coming back in from the mailbox with a big thick envelope, because that meant somebody had sent my manuscript back, and then I was grumpy for the next couple of days. And just this print on demand and ebooks and things like that have just saved me. It's just I just have as many outlets as I want to. It's just been great. I think really that's the future. You think of a huge company like Amazon, right? And they originally started as book sellers, and you would think they would be making their book money by John Grisham and Stephen King and people like that. No, most of Amazon's book income comes from people who are even less prolific than I am. People who are selling, 2 copies a month or a few a week, but there's thousands of us. There's probably millions of us, and that's even more, well, I wouldn't say more important, but more lucrative than the 1 or 2 top people. There's a wonderful book called The Long Tail. And basically they're saying, because of technology, not only in publishing, but in everything, the tail is now more important than the head of the animal. Supposedly the new planets and stars are no longer being discovered by the hidden planetarium, but by some guy with a technologically advanced telescope in his backyard. The best books are being written, I'm not saying by me, but by people like me. The best television is on YouTube. It's not on CBS anymore. So it's phenomenally democratic. It's a hard way to make a living these days, but it's a wonderful way to be creative. I don't know if that answered your question, but you're probably finding out now that ever since I retired, I have a tendency to talk and talk and talk. I'll try to be a little shorter with my answers, I promise.
No, the talking is what we like to hear, because you have all this information that our listeners find incredibly useful.
Oh, good. I hope they do.
Most of them are trying to do the breaking into the self-publishing and, not sure exactly how to approach it or things like that. What would be your advice to someone who hasn't really made that step yet, who hasn't, who's got their manuscript done but doesn't know how to do those next steps? What were your first self-publishing moments?
Yeah, it depends what you want. If you want a lot of glory and money, I suppose you should still start contacting those literary agents. And again, they're wonderful people, and trying to get it accepted by them. If you just want the joy of having a book in your hand, everybody badmouths Amazon, but I think there and a few other companies are wonderful for this. You go to them, you set up something called an author page. Again, mine is another quick commercial, Amazon.com/author/Jim D. Filippi, and you punch in I think it's called KDP Publishing or something, but it's anywhere on Amazon, and they'll take you through it. It'll be frustrating for a while. You'll be electronically sending your manuscript in, and they'll come back with the wrong margins, or they'll reject it because of the this or that. But you learn that, and after a few books like that, it becomes just second nature. As I say, I've gotten to the point now where one of the reasons I've written so many books is I finish one on Wednesday, I put it out to worldwide distribution on Thursday. I probably get as many sales in England as I do in America, especially from things like the Mules of Monte Cassino, and you just go from there. It's not hard. I think that the problem is, one, people still think of it as self-publishing or vanity publishing, and it has a bad kind of aura about it. But get over that. That's 20th century stuff, that's back with dinosaurs. And two is, don't be afraid of the technology, because as you ladies, you had to talk me through the technology of what we're doing now, and it wasn't all that hard at all. And neither is the technology of doing KDP publishing or ebook publishing. I thought my future was going to be in ebooks, because at the time, I thought that was the only way I could do it. But now it's just as easy to do a paper and ink book. And so don't be afraid of the technology, and don't be afraid of the stigma. That would be my 2 words of advice.
So what do you and your group and the writers that you know, what do you talk about as some strategies for quality control? Because, one of the stigmas around self-publishing is that, there are lots of typos, or the plot's really not developed, or whatever, that there's just kind of a lot of stuff that people maybe don't want to read that gets self-published. So what kinds of standards do you all talk about, or hold yourself to, or how do you work together to make sure that you're putting out high quality books that are self-published?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And what you said, even though you said like it doesn't, it does. 90% of the self-published stuff out there, if not more, is really bad stuff. You're right. It's barely been proofread, et cetera. But what you have to do is, you with a group of people and yourself, is just set some really high standards for yourself. As I say, I'll be honest, I meet with these mostly poets twice a month, and a lot of stuff zips right over my head. I just don't know what they're talking about, but they hold me up to standards. I see what they're doing. Things like proofreading, etc. You just have to be careful and get somebody to do that for you, even if you have to hire somebody for you. I was lucky enough to be an English teacher for 30 years, so I do some pretty good proofreading of my own, but I'm always letting other people do it too. I'll put a book out, and I've proofread it 50 times, and I'll pick a hard copy of it up, and there'll still be a mistake in there. So you'll never get rid of all of them, but you just set your standards high, and you enjoy doing it. You don't make proofreading something horrible, like, I have to go that. No, proofreading is, I'm going to go. It's as if I built my own motorcycle from scratch, and I welded the frame, and I did, et cetera, and then I painted it. Well, the proofreading is putting a nice coat of wax on it and making yourself proud of it, and just kind of holding it in your hands like this is something you created, and then finally say, this is ready to show the world, and just holding it up to the world. So I guess it's the short answer, which is you're learning by now I'm not too good at, but the short answer is self-quality, self-control. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really good. Okay, Jim. So one thing that I definitely wanted to mention, because you said like proofreading and things like that, and finding somebody to do that for you. I know that I'm a terrible proofreader. Annalisa actually does my proofreading and editing for me. And that's something that she offers as a writing coach with all of her clients, is that, because just like you said, you're always, especially when it's your own work, I feel like I always miss all of my mistakes, because in my head, it's right. I look at it and I read it and I'm like, oh, in my head, like that works. But then she'll read it and be like, no, that's terrible. Try again.
You're right.
Yeah. So always having another set of eyes like that is really important. So one big question that we ask every single guest that we have on the podcast, and kind of wrapping it up, is if you had one piece of advice to give to aspiring authors, what would it be?
every email I write, every note I write always ends with the same 2 words: enjoy yourself.
That's good.
I like that. That reminds me of the story of the teacher who asked John Lennon what he wanted to be when he grew up, and he said happy.
Yeah, there you go.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. I think that that's something also that you show, Jim. Like when you talk about writing, when you talk about these things, it's not, oh, I had to get a manuscript done. It's, talking excitedly about how much you love your work. And I think that shows. And it probably, I imagine it probably shows very much so in your work as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I always say I know when I'm onto something good when it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm literally running downstairs to get here into my writing room because I can't wait to punch this onto a piece of paper. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
I'm with you.
Yeah. Thank you, Annalisa.
Thank you, Annalisa, for more of your great writing advice. Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres. She's smart, she's fun, and she gets people published. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jim, and thank you so much for all of your amazing advice. To find out more about Jim and how you can buy his book, see our show notes at www.writing-gym.com/self-publish. Thank you, Annalisa, for more of your great writing advice. Annalisa is the resident writing coach in the Writing Gym. She helps writers start, finish, and bring to publication writing in all genres. And if you ask anyone she's worked with, she's the best at what she does. You could publish if you only knew how. Jim has given us some great tips today, writers, but look, if you love the Writing Gym podcast and if you find these tips valuable, think about how much faster your writing will get pumped into publishing shape in the Writing Gym. We take you from generating ideas to getting them on paper, from how to find an agent to how to market your book. You'll also connect with other fantastic writers who will support you and give you quality feedback. We even have me to be your personal trainer and help keep you accountable to your writing goals. You know how you always say, I love to write, but I just can't find the time? Well, what would it be like to have a gentle guide, someone to check in with you on how you're doing on your weekly writing goals? Well, you can, and that's me. You can get the accountability you need to make the time for writing in the Writing Gym. If you're serious about pumping your writing into publishing shape, apply now. Go to www.writing-gym.com. Thank you for joining us to pump up your writing here on the Writing Gym podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes and download the free cheat sheet all about self-publishing on how to improve your self-publishing experience at www.writing-gym.com/self-publish. Happy writing!
This has been the Writing Gym Podcast with Andy Brixey and Annalisa Parent. To join the Writing Gym, visit www.writing-gym.com.